well with Ms. Powell too. That was, it's good.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the June 26, 2019 meeting of the Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission. Thank you for your presence and showing an interest in the business of the planning and zoning. We'll begin with prayer. Our God and Father in heaven, we thank you for this most beautiful day and all the blessings of it, the health you've given us, allow us to live another day and enjoy your creation. We thank you for this community we live in, this country we live in, all the freedoms that we enjoy and all the blessings that you provided to us. Continue to pray for our servicemen and women who serve to protect and defend our freedoms, that you would be with, bless and comfort, protect them, be with their families, bring them home to their loved ones as soon as possible. Be with us as commissioners today and attendees, that the decisions we make will be for the betterment of this community and betterment for all those involved. Continue to watch over and care for us, guide, guard, direct us in all things. In Christ's name we pray, amen. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes of May 22nd, 2019.
Make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
A second.
Vince seconds. Question, discussion on approval of the minutes. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous, and I abstain from that vote being not present for that meeting. Financial report 2019.
That's in your packet as a third item, right after the minutes. One thing I'll point out is on page 2 of the finance report, you guys can look at the revenues, and obviously this is through May, and we're already well over 100% in our revenue projection for the year, so we've exceeded our anticipated revenues, and we're trending well as far as revenues go, and we still have a month left on the revenue input side. Everything else is in line, and I'll be glad to answer any questions on the finance report if you have any questions.
Questions on the financial report? Anything else, Steve, or anything of note that we need to be aware of?
No, it's end of the year, so this is the first year us doing the finance through a contract environment. So we'll see how that goes when the auditor calls and tells me to round up whatever I'm supposed to round up. I think the filing's going okay, but that'll be a challenge for us as we close out our year and build into the new fiscal year.
Okay. Where are we with regard to the audit? We need to.
We're still under contract with our auditor. July 1, they'll contact us and they'll give us a list of items they need. This year it'll be more of a situation between McDaniel Wealth and our auditor communicating as opposed to the staff and the auditor, I believe. And we'll get rolling into that, or mid-July, I would anticipate.
Okay, I couldn't remember if we still had contract or not.
We do. We do.
Okay, good. Any other questions with regard to the financial report? Hearing none, need a motion?
I'll make a motion we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item A, construction sureties.
Again, in your packet every month, as a courtesy, the city has gotten bids for the maple tree quotes, and they tell me they're going to get rolling on that, as well as Center Estates 2, that we pulled the $13,500 that we need an underlined pipe or under the road pipe. They tell me they're going to get 3 of those projects underway and hopefully done by the end of the calendar year. But of course, they're working on the streetscape. This side, the bridge is done. We're kind of in the pecking order behind the 2nd Street Bridge, the streetscape, the second phase of streetscape, and a few other projects. But they tell us that they're going to try to get those done for us this year, and then we'd be writing the city a check back for those 3 projects. There's no action you guys need on that.
Okay. Item F, subdivision approvals. Have several of those. Number 1, William McAnly, Carver Group, subdivision 1020 Argyll Woods.
Again, the plats are all in your packet. Lisa put those in there. They may be stapled in one set. Not sure the orientation on some of those. But the first one should be Argyll Woods. It's a Vantage Engineering plat. Kendall's here, Dale's here, Nancy's here. All the plats are one of their 3. The first one is Jeff Carver. Next phase of his condominium development. You remember we did a few lots not too long ago for Mr. Carver. You see he's creating 4 more condo lots on that first plat. You don't see the building rooftops, these condo lots are actually the lot, and then you see the common open space, common area of the condominium regime across the whole property. Technical review looked at this. Everything met our requirements, and recommendation to approve. Mr. Carver just walked in. Kendall's back here if you guys have any questions on that project. You can clearly see the other condominium units that were developed just to the north of that one, and that shows a little bit more of driveways, building rooftops, lot lines, how they relate. But the next phase are the 4 lots to the south side there.
Move we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
I'll second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 2, David Young Estate, Subdivision 577 Godbey Lane.
The next few plats are, Ms. Estes is here, and these are her plats, and if there's any questions, we can ask her, but this one's pretty straightforward. We're creating track 1, the northern track, which is 13.108. Track 2, which is a transition track, which is 13.100, is then being combined with what's track 3, which is 28.9, for a total of a new track A, 42. So at the end of the day, you're gonna have that northern track, 13.108 acres, and then the southern track will be 42 acres. Everything was technically correct, and the technical review committee is recommending approval of that plat.
Questions?
Make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 3, Michael Overmyer, Shane Terrell, 1.189 acres located 254 260 East Lexington Avenue. Commissioner Barrett is recusing himself from this discussion and vote.
Alrighty, this is an interesting one, but it's fairly minor. Mr. Stephen Dexter's here too. I believe he's representing Klein on this plat. Nancy worked on this. This is interesting. These are 2 existing lots, and what we have is basically a stairwell or some steps that are on the neighbor's property by just a few inches, feet. Are we inches? Inches. And so the option was move the stairwell, move the step, or replat. So what we're doing is literally just moving that line over just a tad to accommodate the structure that belongs to the neighbor. In addition, there's 2 nice non-conforming notes that have to go into play because we now don't meet the setbacks. And Nancy has put those note 1, or Stephen, in combination, Stephen and Nancy have created those non-conforming notes. I don't think they're on the shot of the plat you have, because again, Lisa took a copy shot here of 11 by 17 of the full plat, but there are 2 non-conforming notes that technical review looked at. They're well worded, and they address all the issues we need for both property owners. And again, everything met our requirements, and it looked good, and I don't know if Mr. Dexter or Nancy want to add anything on that plat. I guess you come down the steps, you need to be careful though if you step over. You still could step over into the yard. I don't know about the trespassing part of that, but it could still happen, I guess.
Questions?
I move we approve.
Jim moves we approve.
Second.
Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Item 4, Marlon Taylor, subdivision, 25 plus acres, 1040 Webster Road.
Yeah, I don't know how many plan commissioners get out and drive all these roads and look at these plats, but I drove out there on Webster, been out there several times, and this plat's pretty straightforward too. We're taking a farm and cutting it into 3 tracts. They're well labeled on the plat. Tract 3A would be proposed at 3.131 acres. B is 18.410 acres, and 3 is 4.111 acres. Again, right off front on Webster Road, and again, not too much to relay on this track out in the county. Just again, taking a farm, cutting it into 3 pieces. Nancy's here if you have any questions. The technical review looked at it, and everything met our requirements.
Questions?
I move we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
Second.
I'm sorry.
Second.
Steve seconds. Questions, discussion on the motion to approve? Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. If you have a program, you can pronounce those names. And number 5. But those
Nancy's-
folks have applied for
Last name is Gia.
Gia, okay. All right. Thought I might could get that one. The others, I just,
Judah.
me either. 2 acres located 385 Bonta Lane.
This is about as simple as we get for a plat. We're cutting off a 2-acre tract off a farm. And again, shows a remainder of approximately 34.692 acres. Nice, almost rectangle 2-acre tract. Building setback lines, access on the road, everything meets our requirement. And Nancy's here again if you have any questions or anything she wants to add, but pretty straightforward. Property owner's cutting off a building lot.
Questions, discussion?
Make a
I
motion
move
to
we
approve.
approve.
Susie moves to approve. Jim seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Jackie Beverly Lamb, subdivision, .393 acres, 0 Whites Road, Parksville.
This is a plat AGE submitted, and Dale Jefferson's in the audience here if we have any questions for Dale. And I want to make sure I get this right, but when we looked at technical review, a little unique situation. Piece of property, just a sliver that the road divides. Some discussion on, how the road split that. And basically what's being done is it's being conveyed to the neighbor to the south, the Lee property. So again, we're just taking .393 acres, which is on the south side of the road that was part of the property to the north, and it's being added to the tract to the south. It's a little odd when you navigate the PVA's website and deal with parcels on a daily basis to see some of these parcels that split roads that actually aren't in separate tracts. Some are, some aren't. They're still conveyed in one tract with a right-of-way through them. And in this case, this property on the south is getting this sliver that's on the frontage of their property on Whites Ridge Road. Dale, anything I need to add on that, or?
Questions or discussion?
Motion to approve.
Jeff moves we approve.
Second.
Susie seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 7, Michael and Keista Tudor, 20 acres, 0 Lexington Road, subdivision.
Yeah, this plat looks messier than it really is, and what's odd about this plat when you look at it, it's up close to Old Bridge, and it's on Highway 34. It looks like it doesn't have frontage, but the state has odd right-of-ways through there, and you can kind of see the road, see the right-of-way, but you can see Commonwealth of Kentucky still owns a lot of this real estate that fronts some of this property. So what we're really doing is taking 2 properties that are approximately 23+ acres and cutting it into 4 properties that you see. There's some odd kind of configurations on the ones to the left, and how the frontage is established. All meets our requirements, and there's an easement to serve one of the tracts. Again, the new parcels, of the 4 new parcels along that section, would be 6.193 acres, 4.722 acres, 6.383 acres, and 5.581 acres, and everything looked good according to our subdivision regulations and the needs that we need on a preliminary plat. Dale's here to answer any questions you might have on this property and why it's being reconfigured in such a fashion.
Public access, road access, how's that work?
Well, there's that hatched area is and Dale may want to explain that, there's actually an easement that provides access through that cross hatch section. The track on the right has its frontage on the road you see there to the side. The other properties actually have frontage along 34 through the Commonwealth of Kentucky. And Dale, you might want to explain that in a little more detail for these folks.
The tract to the far east there has road frontage, but it's a sort of a bluff in front
Track
of it.
D, is that track D there?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's sort of a bluff in front of it, and it would be quite an extensive work and financial to put an access or an entrance in there. So we put a easement across track C to get to D.
Just out of curiosity, where is this in relation to the store, Dale?
The store is actually right in front of track A and B.
Okay,
The store came off of this property. That's the reason it
Well,
looks like it's
thinking.
sort of
yeah.
jagged, you know. You've got the store, and then you got the fire department right there beside it.
All right, okay. Any other questions or discussion?
I have a question, please. Is there direct access to Lexington Road? Will there be a cut onto Lexington Road from that property?
There's already an existing entrance on track C. So therefore, with this reason, we put the easement across track C to get to D. I cannot tell you that there will never be an access to D. That would be at the owner's discretion as long as they get a permit through the state. But that's the reason for the easement, because there is an existing entrance into C, so we can go across C to get to D.
That's next to the whole underground house?
It is. Thank you.
Any other questions or discussion? Hearing none, need a motion?
Make a motion to approve.
Steve moves we approve.
Second.
Excuse me, Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Number 8, Jody Sharp Construction Subdivision, 8.299 acres, 120X Max Cavanagh's Road.
Alrighty, this is a little different plat. It's still a preliminary plat, and we're still educating some folks on our new terminology from June of 2018. But, right there, this is what we used to call major plat, but now what we call these plats are, this is a plat with improvements. So our plats are categorized as two things: plats without improvements or plats with improvements. Plats with improvements involve new streets, curb gutter, sidewalks, public utilities, subdivision sections, formalized subdivision section where we're building new streets. So this is what we call, back in the day, again, a major plat, but now a subdivision with improvements. It still goes through the preliminary plat approval just like every other plat, which means it went through technical review for all the technical aspects of the lot sizes and street right-of-ways. And then you all, if you see fit, approve the preliminary plat. And then that puts into motion a series of other approvals that need to be done before the developer can get out there and start building streets and developing this phase of the subdivision. This is technically Hunt Farm Section 4, and it's about 15 lots. Mr. Sharp's here as well as his engineer, but what's different from the days gone by to what we do today that we changed in June of 2018 is the safeguards in the bonding process. So since we're building public infrastructure, there's still multiple steps that the developer has to do once this preliminary plat is actually approved. This plat, if it's approved in the preliminary fashion, cannot be recorded until there's several other items. We don't take it to the courthouse until one, he's got 3 years to turn in a set of construction plans. Those have actually already been submitted. He has to provide a bond estimate on this entire project, and that's already been submitted and is being reviewed by the county and the city. And then there has to be a developer contract that's signed between the Planning Commission and the developer, notarized, executed. That's a contract about the process, the bond, the oversight, and the warranty process that happens on the tail end of the acceptance. There's also a developer fee of 1% of the bonded amount. And there's also then a developer bond that he has to post, and it's now a 100% bonding process. And I forget the raw number on that was $217,000 would be the bond amount that the developer would have to post with us. At that point, still can't move any dirt, start any development until we issue what's called a notice to proceed. Once we agree on all those other pieces, then Mr. Sharp's ready to go out there and get on his dozer and start moving some dirt around, start creating the next phase of the subdivision. At that point in time, we then can record the plat if he wants us to, and he's free to start selling lots once we have all those pieces in play for oversight bonding for the public infrastructure. We've already met on some of these things and are agreeable to moving forward with the new process. There's one little hang up on the county side with that 51% approval policy they have that really runs afoul of the subregs and possibly even state law. We'll work through that with the county. Mr. Sharp would like that clarified before he executes a 100% bond at $217,000 with us. He feels if that's the way we're going with developments, he feels that acceptance then should be more in line with how he develops it in line with our regulations as opposed to a rooftop count in the development phase. So we worked through all these issues. It's a clean preliminary plat as far as we're concerned. It's pretty straightforward on the preliminary side, meets all our requirements, looks good as the next phase of the subdivision. Interesting new name though on that street, and you guys can help me. Is it Patram Sisters Way? So that's the new street name that Mr. Sharp's proposing, and it's a short little cul-de-sac again with 15 lots. Fairly large transmission power line easement goes through that, but again, all the lots have been accommodated to meet the zoning district requirement and to make good solid building lots in this phase of the subdivision. Again, I'll be glad to answer any questions on the preliminary side. Mr. Sharp's here and Kendall is here with Vantage if you have any technical questions on this Section 4 part of Hunt Farm. And again, at this point, we're just preliminary approvals, and we still have to work through all those other items before he could move forward with the development phase of this section. Anything you guys want to add or anything?
Questions, discussion?
One thing I didn't point out, I'm sorry. You do see there's sidewalks. As you know, we worked on the project, and the sidewalks that we're doing on the one side, on this cul-de-sac, go all the way around, in a sense, put sidewalks on both sides of this section. So ultimately, when we're finished, we'll have sidewalks running throughout the whole subdivision on the one side of the prior section that Mr. Sharp is finishing, is about finished out with, by the way. But on this road, we'll have sidewalks on both sides as we go all the way around that cul-de-sac, and then someday, I guess, continue on to the west.
Make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous.
Excuse me, Jerry.
Nancy, yes.
The plats that I get, that have been approved, that I get, I'd like to pick them up this afternoon. If you don't mind,
Fine with me.
We're open till 5.
please. I know, but I want him to sign.
He's already done it. I have too.
Okay. And the
Well,
cover.
it occasionally happens, not often. Steve has requested we switch the order of business just a little bit and go ahead with new business at this time and hold the public hearings as the last item. So we'll go to item H, new business, budget committee report. Terry, you have anything there?
Yeah, we need to discuss and approve the final budget
Okay.
for this year. So in your packet, well, first of all, when you came in this morning, in front of your desk was an 8.5 by 11 summary sheet attached to the big budget spreadsheet, if you get that out. Let's talk about the big budget spreadsheet to begin with, though. This is what was in your packet, and you should have reviewed prior to today's meeting. There's only been one change to it, and that's why you have a new copy today. And if you go to line 57, under expenses, and it's called Bluegrass GIS contract, it shows $4,000. The number in your packet was $5,000. And in the contract that we're gonna be reviewing today, which actually came about between when you got your packet and you're looking at this document, the maximum amount that Steve is committing to BGIF to maintain our online zoning maps, they reduced that from 5 to 4. So that's the only change, and that's why you have this new sheet, because there's $1,000 reduction in the expected expenses. And then let's go to the 8.5 by 11-inch page on the front. I'm just gonna try to do this to speed things up, to explain to you the differences in the expenses and revenue between the preliminary budget, which you already approved a few months ago, and the final budget. So we're talking about this page here, this 8.5 by 11-inch page. And if you look at there's three sections, A, B, and C. If you look at A, what it does is it shows the differences in revenue and expense from between the preliminary budget that we already approved and the final budget that we're asking you to approve today. So if you look, starting out at the top, you'll see that the preliminary 2020 budget on revenue was $184,600. And if you drop straight down, you'll see there's been no changes between the preliminary and final. So the final budget number we're asking you to approve is for $184,600. If you go to the expense column, the preliminary budget we approved for next year had expenses of $192,523. And then these are the changes that occurred that were greater than $1,000 to get down to the final budget that we're going to be asking for approval today. You can see that we added about $2,400 for a part-time intern next summer, like we have this summer. The state finalized its retirement fee calculation, and that increased the amount of money we had to set aside for retirement between the preliminary budget and this budget by about $2,200. Steve reduced the amount he thinks he's going to expend on advertising by $1,000. Bluegrass Tomorrow, which is shown there at $1,500. They're the firm that you're going to be asked to approve an agreement for here shortly, to basically plan and facilitate the Smart Growth Conference that's scheduled for November 1st on request of the mayor. So there's money now in the final budget to pay for that. The Bluegrass ADD GIS contract to maintain our online zoning changes, we have $1,000 less in the budget compared to the preliminary budget now. And then to help fund the conference, the Smart Growth Conference, we had some money in the preliminary budget that we reduced by about $2,700, primarily because Center College stepped forward and said that they will host the conference and pay for the meals, and which took a chunk of money out of what Steve thought we might have to pay, so that's been pulled out. Then all other pluses and minuses are around $1,046. And so that's how you get from what you already approved a few months ago and what you're going to be asking to approve here shortly. And then Section B just compares the fiscal year, next year's budget that we're asking you to approve to what we're actually expecting, projected to spend this year. So it's kind of comparing this year actual to next year budget. And again, same thing if you look at the fiscal year 2019 year end. Right now we're projecting revenues of $195,492. And if you drop straight down, you'll see that the budget for next year is $184,600, just like above. And how you get from this year to next year is, first of all, the Boyle County contribution is up $10,000. They're now contributing the same amount that the city of Danville is, $75,000 to planning and zoning. We reduced a little bit the money we expect to get from subdivision plat fees. That might be a little conservative, but that's what we did. Sign permit fees are up by $1,000, and the big change is zoning permit fees down by $19,000. This year actual compared to next year's budget. And there's really two things driving that. A few months ago, we approved a rate change, you may remember that, to the residential zoning permit fees. And that's going to essentially reduce about $12,000 of this $19,000. Now, you may also remember that at the same time we reduced the zoning permit fees, the county increased the building permit fees because their fees were low and ours were high. And so basically what this is a transfer of dollars from us to them, and that helps them more than pay for the $10,000 additional increase that they're giving us this year. So a big chunk of that $19,000 is the fee reduction that we approved. And then there's about $5,000 in this year, in the 2019 fees from the Denyo expansion. It was a large kind of one-time thing that we don't think we're going to get next year. And so that's most of the $19,000. So that's how you get from what we think we're going to get this year to what's budgeted next year. And if you look at the expense column, this year we're expecting to spend $190,000, $995 in expenses. If you kind of drop down next year, we're expecting it to be up about $4,000 to $195,000. And the big changes are as follows. Office salaries are actually down about $5,700 because we have 2 people on staff now compared to 3, which we had sometime for this year. Consequently, health insurance is also down. Retirement is up a little because of the state increasing the percentage that has to be withheld. We're expecting to spend about $1,000 more in advertising in the budget compared to what we actually spent this year. And then, of course, this year we did not have the Bluegrass Tomorrow fee for planning and facilitating the conference so that's in there. The contract to maintain our online zoning maps, we only spent about $1,000 this year. Steve's budgeting up to $4,000 next year. I don't know if that's due to Perryville and Junction City, or just that we may have more activity.
Just a placeholder on the contract.
Yeah, placeholder on the contract.
We may only spend 1,000 of that next year too, we just don't know.
And then, of course, we didn't have any smart growth match in for the conference to help pay for fees that Center College is not paying for. And then there's a whole bunch of pluses and minuses, but none of them are more than $1,000 change, and that's how you get then from this year to next year's budget. And then item C is just a quick summary. It just shows the beginning balance for this year. As we started this year at $78,151, we had revenues of $195,000, expenses of $190,000, so the ending reserve was $82,688. That, of course, becomes our beginning balance for this year's proposed budget. There's the revenue that we've got, there's expenses we've got, and so we expect the ending reserve to be down about $10,000 from this year if this unfolds as budgeted. So any questions or comments? If not, we'd entertain a motion then to approve the final fiscal year 20 budget.
Second.
Got a motion?
I move we approve.
Jim moves we approve. Vince seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous.
Can we just thank the budget committee for
Yeah.
all their work in preparing and presenting this?
Terry,
Oh, my goodness.
Terry, I'd also like to add, we will increase your salary.
Double it.
Double it, maybe.
Triple it.
All right. All right, thank you, Terry, excellent job, we do appreciate that very much. Personal service contract, Bluegrass Tomorrow,
Yeah, let me explain that. That was in your packet, and then there was another contract laid out at your chair that says Bluegrass Ave. So that came in late, and if it's okay, we'd like to get both contracts at least reviewed and discussed. The first one is Bluegrass Tomorrow, and as you heard, as we started the Smart Growth Planning Committee, wow, it's been a while. Last year, late last year. Started with an idea from the mayor, kind of grew from there, asked that we take the lead. The committee's been formed. It's 8 folks on the committee. And I'm on that, and we meet monthly, and last month we met twice a month. At some point, we spent 2-3 months just trying to decide what building we're gonna be in and whatever. At some point, Bluegrass Tomorrow became connected with the group, Mr. Rob Rumpke that heads up that group, and he showed up at a meeting or two and basically convinced us he has some expertise in event planning and putting on events. And the group kind of fell in love with him and said, hey, this could be our MC, planning event guru, and honestly, it'd take a little bit of weight off my shoulders on this. And he suggested he'd be willing to play that role as far as set an agenda, locate speakers, MC the event, and coordinate with the committee. And he suggested $1,500 is what he would need to do such a job. So he put together a contract. We struggled with a little bit, and I sent it to Henry. Henry did some major modifications on this contract to put it in a style that we feel protects us and says the things we need. I mean, it was a major redo of this contract. So we've got it the way we would want it to read, and Bluegrass Tomorrow had no issues with any of the changes we made as far as responsibilities, services, fees, indemnification, confidentiality, on and on and on. It's in the contract. The bottom dollar is $1,500 to be paid on after the services are provided. It's in the budget if you all see fit. And be glad to discuss anything about the contract or Bluegrass Tomorrow or the role they would play if you guys have any questions. But I would need authorization from you all to enter into this contract with them for that service.
Well, I don't like to comment.
probably not gonna be a popular comment, but I got on the website of Bluegrass Tomorrow, and I was a little concerned that, you know, their mission statement states that their, primary goal was the preservation of bluegrass farmland. I don't see how that doesn't sound to me like that's smart growth. I believe that lends a lot of people to the assumption, rightfully or wrong, that the smart growth term is a euphemism for no growth. That concerns me. If we're gonna have a community discussion about smart growth, I'd like it to not be a one-dimensional discussion. And I would like for us to do all we can to have a multi-dimensional discussion about growth and not a no-growth discussion.
Well, interesting enough, I'm familiar with Bluegrass Tomorrow. I guess I'm on the fence on their whole organization and issue. Seemed to have been focused on Fayette County for a long time, and it's kind of moved out. Honestly, they're kind of, including to Mr. Rumpke himself, their kind of entry into this was when Toyota came to Kentucky and consuming real estate in Scott County and preservation of farmland and Toyota. And, you know, and they sort of spun off from there. They're well-funded. They're a fairly large kind of association that does a lot of things. I think our goal is to some level, use Mr. Rumpke's expertise as an event planner, putting on a forum. But we as a committee have discussed the branding aspect of whether this is a Bluegrass Tomorrow event or a Boyle County event and how it's worded and who's putting on the event, for example, because of some concerns of that nature. This is not an event to put on their agenda out there. Now, they claim to be the smart growth kind of gurus of the region. I think that's one small aspect of smart growth is farmland preservation. There's 9 other principles that we've tried to coach the group on what smart growth is, and a lot of it is about development and developing in the right way. It's not about no development, it's about smart development. Farmland preservation even is not about total preservation, no growth. Farmland preservation and smart growth is about developing and then conserving at the same time. It is about growth. It is about putting rooftops on the ground at the same time, saving some cropland. So I'm not real sure what their mission statement is and what they're about or what their real interest is in our conference, but I think at this point they've shown us they want to MC it, put together an agenda, and hire or get some speakers contracted to be at this event. The committee has oversight and veto power on all those items, and you know, the first couple topics I threw out there was a discussion on 2168. You know, how we got there, why the map says what it says. Was that the smartest plan for this community? I thought that should be a case study. If we're going to talk about smart growth, that the downtown ought to be a focus. Corridor planning ought to be a focus. Traffic patterns ought to be a focus. I've thrown several ideas out. Most of them get sort of nixed by the group, but I think that's where we're heading, is a multifaceted conference with lots of topics related to lots of parts of smart growth. Now, at this point, we're at the agenda formation stage, and that's where we're at. And his job at this point would be to get that agenda to come to some level where we can put on this conference with some breakout sessions and speakers.
Well, my concern was when I saw that, and when I looked at it, that to me raises some red flags, and it concerns me that I think we need to have a true discussion and not have someone who's got a slant or a bent or an agenda to no growth.
At this point, I'm not 100% sure there was even an agenda topic specifically on farmland preservation. I think it was more Smart Growth 101, what it is.
I'm just going by their website.
I understand. And I think some committee members expressed something similar until they met him, and then this is what they asked me to bring forward to you guys.
Steve, who's the committee?
The committee, it was 2 planning commissioners at that time, which was Wendy and Mary Beth. Mary Beth has since left the planning commission, but she stayed on the committee. And then it's Ann and Sarah, and then it's 2 elected officials, John Kaywood and Denise Terry, and then it's Brian Huxley, vice president at Center, and that's been a positive relationship right there, saved us a few bucks. And then Jennifer Kirshner with the tourism folks. And then I'm on there kind of as the MC. And then Rob's been showing up Rob Rumpke, the director of Bluegrass Tomorrow, executive director, he's showed up the last couple meetings and started to take that in a different direction. That's where we're at. I'm on the fence on it. Again, it's your all's decision. You all manage the money here. It's $1,500. We did allocate $3,750 towards this conference with the understanding we'd get a match. This is $1,500 going to that, and then we reduced the other because we've already got some other services. So at the end of the day, we look like we're going to be out $2,500 is the max amount. So my real focus is, it was $3,700, now it's $2,500. The day's going to come and go, and we'll get this thing behind us, and we'll move on to what we do every day.
Do the developers, I guess, in the community feel like they have representation on the committee?
I don't think they do. I don't think they do.
I think that goes without saying. Name me one person on that committee that.
Yeah, and again, the committee we spent several months just on the formation of the committee. Eventually it was going to be 10, 15, 16, who, and eventually we figured 8 is a doable number, and it's barely been doable. It's been round and round on a lot of issues, but we started in October. I don't know how many meetings we're into this, a dozen or so, or 10, month after month, and we're heading towards a November 1st all-day conference on a Friday at Center College, and we still got a lot to do if we're going to pull this off. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I think there should be a representative of the traditional developers on the committee, not because I don't have any personal preference in this, but you can't have a one-sided committee if it's turned out that it's not balanced enough. Well, it needs to be balanced.
Yeah. Well, interesting enough,
I don't know if that would be Jeff if he wanted to do it, or do we appoint somebody, or is it?
we could. I mean, it's
Okay,
interesting.
well,
Initially we had
That
2
ship
planning
has sailed.
commissioners
You're
on.
voting right now. You've already planned your meeting.
Well, we don't have to
You've
vote on
already
it today. I mean, this is the thing. You guys could table this
I'm just
contract.
voicing my concern that I want to have this discussion. I think we need to have a discussion, but I just don't want it to be a one-sided discussion or a predetermined discussion, or
Understand.
someone that's got a predisposed commitment to one side of the issue. And
Yeah.
from their website, that's what I see.
Yeah, I understand. And again, we had 2 planning commissioners, but then Mary Beth stepped off, so she's participated to some level. Maybe we need another planning commissioner on there with Wendy, and maybe that's.
Well, I think what we need is you to just try to keep this a balanced
Yeah,
forum.
sure.
And if we can do that, then I think.
I think what I saw so far feels fairly vanilla to me, honestly. I mean, the whole issue is where we're going to do a smart growth one-on-one, kind of cookie cutter, educate the public on just the general principles, or we're going to dive down into some real in-the-weeds issue that I thought would make direct impacts. And it seems like we're taking the kind of cookie cutter, slow, let's just generally touch the edges of what smart growth is. The last agenda, though, did have some interesting breakout session options. And again, I got a draft agenda somewhere in my office. I could grab it and tell you what's on it right now. There's literally some speakers' names. I'm not sure I recognize all of them or know them personally. I know their names. And then the topics that they would attempt to represent. And again, these folks might be able to comment on those people, but you guys may want to table this, and we'll come back next month and look at it. But I'd be glad to grab the draft agenda and tell you right now the focus of it. At this point, it seems like it's somewhat well-rounded, but it definitely doesn't have any developers on the committee.
Well, don't we have final approval of the agenda and so forth?
No, that's what's interesting. That we were asked to lead it, but we formed this committee in the spirit of, hey, let's all work together. And the committee is actually driving this train, we're making votes as we move through on all these procedural things on place and time, and do we charge, what do we feed them, and parking, and on, and the planning commission's role at this point is to pay the bills.
So who has final approval of
The committee does right now.
Committee.
I think the way we structured it, if you guys want it, I have no problem with that, honestly, but I'd bounce it by the committee. But right now, we've empowered the committee to put on this event. We're an arm's length away, except for just staffing it and paying the bills.
Jeff, would you be
Yeah,
willing to be another committee member on that committee?
You want me to grab the agenda and let y'all see the draft one? But it's going to change. We're still, and one of these ladies may want to comment on it. Let me grab it.
Vince?
Yeah, I think to be catalytic, in anything moving forward, you have to have both sides present. Otherwise, it's gonna slow the process down. So if there is sides, but there's issues, I mean, and I think I wouldn't be, have professional expertise enough to know what somebody like a Jeff Baird knows. I mean, and I don't think maybe anybody else on the committee does. So some of the well-intentioned things that we might put together might become a really roadblock for any kind of progress at all. So rather than deal with that later on and separating and having bad feelings about not whatever, I think you get right to it, you know, and be inclusive rather than exclusive, not on purpose, but sort of happen. And then I think everybody can feel good about it because they'll come to a consensus of what is good for the area based on the economics of growth, traditional growth, and also preserving the things that make Danville and Boyle County a great place to live. And so I would make a suggestion that we try to move in that direction and adjust the membership of the committee. So that's my only thought about it, you know.
Well, I guess my understanding is that this is simply an educational conference, information conference, meeting, and in and of it, there's no decisions of any formality or that'll be made that would bind anybody's hands on anything. It's just an educational conference or a meeting of one day to enlighten the public. And I guess I struggle with the idea of, I guess that it's going to turn us upside down and inside out. I don't have that feeling, irregardless of what's presented.
Let me just quickly walk you through a couple things on here. You can see this is a one-day conference, welcomed by the mayor or center president. Smart Growth 101 by Ned Crankshaw with UK. Panel discussion, components of smart growth. Talking about looking at some other cities, maybe Franklin, Tennessee, Granville, Ohio, some others to talk about examples of things we see in other towns. And then Representative of Farmland Economic Development Preservation, Billy Van Pelt of the American Farmland Trust. Again, that kind of pushes that to the one side of the spectrum. And then talking about growth and development from bigger cities, other counties. Mr. Rumpke suggested Bowling Green and Owensboro, although the committee made clear they don't want anything from Bowling Green mentioned, so I won't get into any more of that. But and then we would, as you see, finding a balance of economy, agriculture, business, industry, breakout sessions, downtown master plan, Junction City, Perryville, case study with Dr. Ryan Sandwick. That's my suggestion. He's a landscape architect gentleman at UK that I've met that did an exercise for small cities about how they grow their downtowns. That was my one input. That's really the only one that I suggested. Countywide, Dr. Allison Davis with the Director of Community and Economic Development, again, Initiative of Kentucky, Housing Options and Farmland Considerations, Phil Holenbeck. And then the linear case study, 2168 bypass, was what Mr. Rumpke suggested. It was interesting, and committee struggled a little bit with that one. And then the keynote speaker, right now, again, these are suggested, is Holly Wiedemann and David Tomes. And you can read the rest of that. So breakout sessions, and that's the draft agenda at this point. It's going to change. We don't know if those speakers can attend. There's just still a lot of discussion in the planning phase of that one-day conference. It has been suggested to me that we should probably have someone from the National Home Builders or the National Builders Association to do a fair and balanced side of that, and they're willing to send people across the country. The Builders Association has folks that they represent the concepts of smart growth in a lot of their literature, and they would be willing to come to your community and give it from a building construction perspective. That was suggested to me by some folks, and I haven't actually put that out to the committee yet. That's a perfect example of what we're doing. We're just bringing ideas, and the committee raises their hands, says we agree or we don't agree.
And how are we, not we, but how are the speakers being compensated? How's that?
That is to be determined, and that's Mr. Rumpke's role, is to get these speakers lined up, try to get them as cheap as we can, if not just pay their mileage, promise them a good meal. That's where our other $1,000 comes in. We may have to pay some incidental costs, maybe with center on some of the food prep, but we're not sure yet. But that's to be determined. Again, this whole concept started with, we'd put so much money up with the understanding there'd be a private partnership here. We've yet to see any of those dollars come in our way, except from center. And I think the committee's challenged with that aspect at this point, is to, if we need another $2,000 to pay these speakers, some folks need to fundraise a little bit on that end too. That was part of the agreement we all laid out.
Jody, y'all got any money you could throw in on
Yeah,
that?
there's some dollars right back there.
I've never been a part of this.
You don't have to be a part.
He's a smart guy. There's some comments.
Yes, Ann?
Thank you. Ann Ferguson, 645 Kings Mill Road. I've been a member of this committee since October 2018. I believe we met first on October 29th. If you will allow me, I'd like to give you a little history of this committee. When we met on October 29th, there were 4 of us, Sarah Volkamp and I, Mary Beth Touchstone, and Wendy Rochester. We talked at that meeting and the next meeting about expanding the committee. We submitted several names. All 4 of us submitted several names. We sent emails around. None of the suggestions was accepted. We talked about including farmers, since they own most of the land. We talked about including movers and shakers in the community, and one mover did accept appointment, and then she resigned. The next thing we had John K. Wood from the Fiscal Court and Denise Terry from the City Commission. And we also had Jennifer Kirshner from, and Brian Huxley from Center, financial officer there. So our committee was now 8 people. What you have before you is a draft agenda presented by Rob Rumpke. Bluegrass Tomorrow was suggested by Mike Paros. He has been very supportive of including Bluegrass Tomorrow. I was not personally convinced that we needed Rob Rumpke for a one-day kind of seminar on smart growth that was designed to tutor elected officials, appointed officials, and the general public on smart growth principles. Our purpose has morphed into something more. And I want to say that I certainly appreciate Jeff Baird's comments. He is quite right that we need to have all aspects represented here. Certainly you as commissioners need to know what this committee is doing and thinking. Bear in mind that the agenda you have been presented with today is a draft. It should be marked across there. None of that is final. None of the speakers has been agreed to. We are still in a planning stage. And we in Smart Growth are committed to growth. We're not no-growth people. We are not. And we want you to know that. We want the conference to be successful, and we want it to be pleasing to the Planning and Zoning Commission.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? Yes, Jody.
Hi, I'm Jody Sharp. The topic that Steve mentioned about bringing in a tax economist to be a part of this program was my idea. When I viewed your agenda, I had a problem with it because I thought it was not a balanced approach. A balanced approach presents all aspects and facets of growth and development within a community. And a component of that is the economic consequences of growth, economic consequences of no growth. And presently, we need to be optimistic and view growth as going forward without being absolutely restrictive, but operating within acceptable bounds of both preservation and good solid growth. Presently, I think this commission is doing a very good job in reviewing the regs that I operate under. I think that it is very forward-thinking because when I have read and reviewed what has been presented, I am seeing that we are addressing the housing needs of all segments of our community, which run from first-time home buyers to retirees and all of those that occur within. And so I am here to commend you for being very visionary and farsighted in the efforts that you are making to improve our community. And again, go back to what I said originally, the economics of growth and no growth need to have an economist that specializes in that so that he can present a real case to those that you are hoping to address. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. So, we need a motion to approve or table the contract, one of the two.
It's whatever your pleasure
One of
is.
the two, I mean.
Yes, sir.
I think it's where we are.
And if your desires to expand the committee, add other members, I'd be glad to. We're meeting again on July 9th at 2 o'clock. I'd be glad to take any ideas you all have and run that by the committee.
I think we have to be careful about expanding the committee just to add interest groups. Otherwise, we'll have a never-ending expansion of committee members. I think we have to trust that the committee members selected are going to have a balanced view. I mean, that's no reason to suggest that they wouldn't have, so I would just leave that alone.
Again, I showed you the draft just to give you an indication of
right.
where we're at, and again, Ann's right, we're just still struggling through the agenda, but we haven't formalized this contract yet, and my assumption is once we do that, this gentleman will really start to take this off more in the contract role that it says, again, you can look at the responsibilities. He's going to do something very specific for this community in this role of planning this event.
You probably said so at the beginning, but does the committee want this contract approved?
Yes.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Well, if you think that's the way to go and the committee wants it, then I don't see any reason we should oppose it, so I'll make a motion to approve.
Susie moves we approve the contract,
A second.
and, I'm sorry, Steve seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Votes
Abstain.
unanimous with one abstention?
Jim, yes.
Yeah. Votes unanimous, one abstention. Anything else under new business, Steve?
Well, that second contract for the Bluegrass ad,
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry.
that's why I actually love these meetings. Things just go, I didn't expect that, but that's what we do. Talk about all these issues and get them right. So the Bluegrass ad contract is at your seat too, and as Terry mentioned in the budget presentation, they actually made a typo, I'll just be honest with you. They sent the contract and it said 4,000 instead of 5,000. I said, hey, that looks good. So let's just go ahead with 4,000. They called me back and said, no, that was supposed to be 5,000 like last year. I said, let's try 4,000 this year. And if we need more money, we'll figure it out. But as Terry mentioned, we haven't been utilizing the full amount. This is a billable hourly contract. As we use the service, they bill us, and last year we barely used $1,000. and we didn't use 3,000 the year before. But it's a standalone base that if we had to do a lot more mapping, that would be their role. So that's the contract for us to move forward in a joint effort with the Bluegrass Ad for next year. Again, just asking your authority for me to enter into that.
I'll make a motion, we approve.
Terry moves we approve.
second.
Jim seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to approve. Hearing none, all in favor? Vote unanimous. Any other new business? Good. Item G, public hearings. Danville-Boyle County Planning and Zoning Commission has filed an amendment to Chapter 9 of the 2017 Boyle County Compensation Plan, Comprehensive Plan. This is regard to Junction City future use land map.
Yeah, it's up on the screen, and to make this quick, we used up a lot of time, and we really want to get to the zoning ordinance next phase, so gonna make this quick and easy. We need to table this. And ask that you table it. This is the draft. It's been on the website for several months. We had an open house on Saturday. It was a rainy day, but we had decent turnout of people. About 2 or 3 minor issues were raised, enough that I want to go back and meet with the subcommittee, which are elected officials in Junction City, and present them the changes. So at this point, I don't think it's ready to come before you guys. I want to table the request so we don't have to re-advertise next month, save us a few bucks, and we can just put this on the next month's agenda after I meet with the committee on second week of July and run them by 2 little minor changes that came up at the open house.
Motion to table.
Make a motion to table.
Susie makes a motion.
Second.
Jeff seconds. Question, discussion on the motion to table. All in favor? Vote unanimous. And then number 2, Danville Planning and Zoning Commission has filed an application to amend Articles 4, 5, 7 of the joint zoning ordinance. And I think that's been made available for your reading pleasure.
Yep, you all have it. Got several slides up here, and not to be feared, but there's 271. But we're not going through them all, obviously. The plan here today is to do this, and this is why I asked the chairman to swap the business items. I wanted to start to walk through the zoning ordinance in a real incremental fashion. And when you guys feel we're done, we're tired, we're wore out, we got other things we need to do today, let's just table this and move on. The goal is not to get a vote today. The goal is to open the public hearing, present the changes to you guys that we're suggesting in Articles 4, 5, and 7 as a staff, and then let the public comment, let others comment, and then ultimately, at some point, we vote and forward it on to the city, the county, and the other cities. The goal is maybe just to get through Article 4 today and not even start on 5. And we come back, but if we, again, what I'd like at the end of whatever presentation you allow me to do is we would suggest that we table this item till the July meeting, come back in July, pick up where we left off as the last agenda item. If we're not done, we'll table it to August. And if we're not done then, we'll table it to September. But what we want to do is get all the comments, all the public comments, all the staff comments in the form of a public hearing, and then ultimately provide a record that we can forward on to the city and the county someday if we ever get this forward. There's a ton of changes in Article 4, and as I mentioned to you guys in the first phase when we did 1, 2, 3, and 7, 6, that was the easy stuff, real easy. Article 4 itself has a lot of stuff in it. As you all know, signs are a big issue, and we're going to talk about signs briefly. I'm going to even let Henry do something on that real quick from a legal side, and then show you some photos that we took and try to make this not so boring as we walk through this text, and then point out just highlights of Article 4 of some major items that are changing. But to start with, I'm going to walk through a couple pages in 4, right off the bat, this first page, and I'll reference page numbers on your packet, and the slides are more for the public. They're going to be hard for them to read, but you guys have everything in your seat. Now, on the slides, I did also put old stuff, so the stuff that was in the back of your packet was strikeout. I got more of a side-by-side comparison of new versus old so I can show some of you guys specifically what changed. But the first major page is right here at page 4-1, and it's the new district names. And we've been talking for a while why we need to change the district names more like they used to be before the 2002-2004 amendment. And in the short summary real quick of the zoning ordinance, if you're using this book every day and you're a consumer or a client of ours, this is a very complicated document to use, and it doesn't have to be. Right now, it's full of typos, inconsistencies. We've had a ton of amendments over the years that never were codified in the book, They're not even in the zoning ordinance. They're a newspaper article in the front of the book. They're not in the book. That's a real problem if you're a developer or a surveyor engineer trying to find out what the rules are. If you open our book up right now and look at the NCC chapter, it's not even the uses that are allowed. They were changed in 2011 but never put in the book. Very confusing book to navigate. One of the goals here is to simplify, streamline, organize, and make it more user-friendly for the ultimate consumer out there, which is our clients that come to the Planning Commission. As Mr. Sharp alluded to, another issue is to put as many modern development techniques that are out there in the industry in the United States and make this town competitive, especially on the housing front, and give developers options that make sense, as well as allow some people to maximize their real estate, especially in the residential setting, their backyards to some degree. And I'll explain how our rules are very strange in that area when it comes to accessory buildings. And then lastly, we want it to be fair. Just want this book to be fair, and I'm going to point out several things that we're fixing that I think make it's more fair in a development scheme than what the prior language said when it was overly complicated or specific to one kind of client or one kind of use instead of a uniform fashion. So right off the first page, I'm going to walk you through the new district names, and I'm going to show you where they convert. These first two pages might be the most important pages in the whole book. But as we go down the hill, I'm just going to show you real quick. This is the first page of Article 4 that tells us what the zoning districts are to get all the districts. We don't even have a page like this in the old book. The old book starts with Article 5, and it doesn't say what all the district names are. You literally have to flip back to the table of contents to know what page is what. This first page has every district we're going to move forward with, the acronym, and the page number. So obviously we've got the agriculture district. We got single-family residential. We're creating a new RR district for the rural areas. We're creating other R1 districts. Again, our terminology today is GRA and GRB for single-family. No one knows what those mean. R1 is as uniform as it goes across the planet in zoning verbiage. A realtor calls from another state or a developer called me from Columbus. When you say GRA or B, they don't know what that means. You say R1, R2, R3, they instantly know what that means. That used to be the terms we used prior to 2000. When we changed them to kind of all these other terms, it looked different, it felt different, but at the end of the day, it's not understood across the development community what these terms mean. So we're simplifying that. Going on down, you see RM2, which is two-family, RM3, a new RM4, a new neighborhood business, a new general business, a new office category, and some industrial categories that we currently didn't have. Really the easier way to understand is turn to the next page. And this is a very, very, very important chart. I can't emphasize that enough. In 2002, when we adopted the last ordinance and we converted all the old names to the names we use, we converted the old names to the names we use, but we didn't put any documentation in the book on what we changed. What used to be R1 became GRA, and what used to be R2 became GRB, and what used to be R3 became NCRA. And then we realized we made a mistake in 2011, and R3 should have became NCC, and then we started changing things. There needs to be clear definition as we move forward and change district names on what's called a conversion chart. So I'm providing in the document a conversion chart, and it makes it really easy to understand what we're doing as we move forward. And it's in the book. And number one goal of this is that we don't, what's called a taking or inverse condemnation. We do not want to convert a name to another district and in a sense take somebody's rights away, where they can come back and say, hey, you just cost me a few bucks. Give you a good example. Right now, GRB allows single family and duplex. And we're going to convert GRB to R2, which is going to allow single family and duplex. If we were to convert a district and they had duplex rights and now they don't, or they had apartment rights and now they don't, that's a taking. That could come back and bite us someday, because they could do commercial, now they can't do commercial. And that's exactly what happened in 2004, and in 2011 we corrected it, because we mislabeled some stuff, and some folks that thought they had commercial rights found out they didn't have commercial rights, they had apartment rights. And things that were apartments we labeled commercial by an error in this conversion. So Henry and I have spent a lot of time studying these conversions, So they're A, one for one, and we don't take anyone's rights away. So I'm gonna walk you through what's changed, and it's the easiest way to see it. What used to be R1 ag becomes ag, AG. Not much, too difficult there. The AC district, agriculture commercial, was never developed. I don't even know really what that is, why we needed it. It becomes neighborhood business. If there was some, it was neighborhood business caliber, and that's what it would go to. GRA becomes R1A, exact same minimum lot size, 10,000 square foot, single family to single family. Not really easy on that one. GRB, our small lot residential, allows single family and duplex, goes to RM2, which allows single family and duplex, same minimum lot size. GRC was never developed. And again, if you all know what these terms mean, I would love to pretend I know what I mean, these are weird acronyms for zoning districts, and the terms we're using on the right are what are uniform across the whole state, if not the whole country. So GRC, again, was never developed, never used. It becomes NB by default. Our RMH, which was residential manufactured housing, becomes mobile home park as we know them. NCRA, which was neighborhood center residential, was mistakenly made something else. It becomes R3. NCRB, which is neighborhood center residential, becomes R3, gives it the highest and best use. NCRC, neighborhood center commercial, which at one time was mistakenly apartments and then relabeled commercial, becomes the new general business category, which gives it the exact same development rights in a business category. NCC, neighborhood conservation classification, which was mistakenly commercial, then it was changed to multifamily, and currently is multifamily, although in the book it's listed as commercial, but it is actually multifamily, goes to RM3 multifamily. Highway commercial becomes highway business. Rural commercial, which we have a little bit out, becomes neighborhood business, and I'll tell you why. The rural commercial was initially meant to be way out in the county, but as you remember when we zoned a little project behind TSC out there, clearly the highway commercial wasn't the best fit. Neighborhood business would have been the best category, but our rural commercial, which was small scale commercial, was only meant to be out in the county. I don't see why both can't work in either setting. It's smaller lot, less building, less signage, and it works in the city or the county. It's just smaller retail than highway commercial. So that category goes to, rural commercial goes neighborhood business. Institutional campus development and industrial business development stay exactly as they were. We just changed the rules. And the downtown district becomes central business because, as I'll show you in a minute, the downtown is a place. It's not really a zoning district. We call the downtown downtown, but yet people think of the downtown geographically different than zoning spatially. And so by calling it central business, we define what the zoning district is, and whatever the downtown is another real world thing, and it's just better terminology. So with that, I'm going to stop and hand it off to Henry, because one of the things that's in this Article 4 are signs, and one of the reasons we even started this is because we have a directive from the United States Supreme Court to change the way we do sign ordinances in this whole United States, and our ordinance currently does not meet that standard and needs to be revised. So we started with signs, and it's very complicated, and we're going to let Henry give you a little legal background. And it started right here in Arizona with this pastor, and Henry's going to tell you why there was a Supreme Court case and why we're under the directive to do what we're doing.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Morning.
This is Pastor Clyde Reed from the Good News Community Church. I think it says Presbyterian up there. The opinion says Community Church. That was a church that didn't have a permanent location in the town of Gilbert, Arizona, and thus they went around to various elementary schools, other public spaces for their Sunday morning services. In order to let the faithful know where to show up on a Sunday, they would go around on Saturday during the day and place signs all about. And then sometime Sunday after the service, they would take the signs down. And in that way, they ran afoul of Gilbert's sign code. The code was kind of draconian in the way it was enforced on them particularly. Temporary signs were only permitted in certain instances, and they drew distinctions between what was the content of the sign. Political signs had the most leniency. You could put many of them out. They could be large. You could leave them for extended periods of time. Ideological signs, slightly less leniency, but still you could put several of them out. Temporary directional signs, like the ones you're seeing up there, had basically a 13-hour window that they could be placed in public. They had to be set out no more than 12 hours before the event, and they had to be taken down within 1 hour of the event's conclusion. So if you have an 11 a.m. service, you have to be out late at night, and if you think about it, who's really driving by and looking at a sign? It seems to me like a preposterous ordinance. But they got cited, and Pastor Reed had a meeting with the town's sign code compliance manager, and he said there would be no leniency on the matter. So the church sued. Perhaps they had some outside help as well. They went to the federal district court in Arizona, and they moved first for an injunction to stop enforcement of the ordinance on them. And district court denied it. Appellate court for the Ninth Circuit also denied it, up and down the appellate ladder. Then they said, well, if you won't stop enforcement, we're asking you to rule that this code is unconstitutional on its face, as an abridgment of our First Amendment rights. Again, the district court and court of appeals said no, so it went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court reversed in a 9-0 decision. Justices Kennedy and the late Justice Scalia are no longer on the court, but nevertheless, it was a unanimous decision, so this is law that won't change very soon. The issues before the Supreme Court were, well, if we have a non-content-based justification for our ordinance, does that save it? And the court said no, because before we're talking about your motives for passing this ordinance, we have to look at whether the ordinance from the outset discriminates. And they said because this differentiates between different types of signs, it's content-based on its face. They said, well, if we're content neutral about speakers, if we don't single out particular ideologies or viewpoints, does that save the ordinance? The Supreme Court said no. If you're not discriminating between viewpoints, the effect is still that you're barring a whole topic from public conversation. And so the law in this case that we need to consider is the First Amendment, which says that Congress shall not pass a law which abridges the freedom of speech. That's made applicable to the states by the 14th Amendment. And the way that operates with sign codes is that ordinances that are based on the content of signs are presumptively invalid. That doesn't mean they have to be ripped out of the ground, but they have a presumption of invalidity. So the court then asks, is the ordinance narrowly tailored to meet a government interest of the highest order? And some courts have said, is there no other less restrictive means to do it? And in this case, they found that Gilbert's ordinance was not narrowly tailored, and in fact that it was somewhat under-inclusive, because Gilbert's justifications were that we're trying to protect the aesthetic values of the town, we're trying to work in the interest of traffic safety. The court said if those were truly your interests, then you would have likewise outlawed political signs and ideological signs in the same way. So the real take-home of this, all of this discussion, is that if you have to read the content of the sign, it's a content-based ordinance. So that's not a permissible way to draw lines in your sign ordinance. This has been applied locally. This was a 2015 case that had quick reverberations in the municipal world. The Kentucky Supreme Court tackled it in the case of Champion versus Commonwealth. That was a Lexington case where the panhandling ordinance was enforced against a man. And the Kentucky Supreme Court said, well, now that we have this Reed decision on the books, you are drawing a distinction about panhandling, and that's a specific type of speech, and it's protected. If your interest was really traffic safety, then you would keep other people out of the thoroughfares as well, like protesters, demonstrators. And so same thing as the Reed case, Town of Gilbert, the ordinance got struck down. I looked at our own Chapter 13, which we're working on amending right now, and just a few things jumped out right off the bat. In 13.6G, we talk about permissible temporary signs. It lists events and campaigns only. Well, when I listened to oral arguments for this case, the Supreme Court justices had a good time ribbing the lawyers and saying, well, what if my son-in-law puts up a bunch of signs that says, "Happy birthday, Samuel is 60." That's a type of sign that would be prohibited under our ordinance, and we're not permitted to do that. There are regs in certain zoning districts that say, well, these signs are permissible, but daycares have certain limitations on their signs. We can't do that. And so what you see in front of you, starting on page 439, we're working on making sure it has no distinctions based on the content of the signs, and that should save us from this strict scrutiny that's now applicable. Steve, did I
Is that it?
cover what you wanted?
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll just jump on past these slides, and Henry's gone through all those of the case.
Steve, let me ask you a
Yes.
question, just from my understanding. What's the difference between those two neighborhood center residential, NCRA and B?
Right now, they're very confusing. One says single-family and duplex and multifamily. The other says single-family, duplex, and multifamily at different scales. And then they have different standards for parking and lot sizes, basically. So you can do all kinds of that residential category. It comes down to lot sizes and setbacks are different.
Well, they were just called the same thing, so I didn't know what.
Henry mentioned where we're going to start on signs. We're not going to be there yet, but we are going to talk about what we've done. And as he mentioned, it's happening all over the country. Mr. Scott, the city manager, got a letter when I first got here and handed it to me that we've got folks kind of looking around the state, making sure we're in compliance. We don't want to be that city someday that some attorneys end up here and say, hey, we looked at your zoning ordinance, you're clearly afoul of that Supreme Court directive, and take some kind of action on either the planning commission, the city, or all of us. So the goal is to get our sign ordinance fixed in that uniform fashion, and I think we've attempted to do that in the structure where clearly we're not saying specific sign rules one way or the other. They're generic to the use category, whether they be residential, commercial, industrial. We're just setting generic rules by district. Not by district, by use category. So with that, we're going to roll into Chapter 4. And again, don't be shy about asking a question. Don't be shy about looking at the clock and say, we're done, that's enough, let's come back next month. It won't hurt my feelings. This chapter is 58 pages long, and I'm going to show you some of the old text and walk you through incrementally some of these changes. And I'll be glad to answer any questions you guys have on the Chapter 4 stuff. We're not going to get to Chapter 5, obviously, today. So with that, I'm going to jump on page 4-4, which is the Ag District, and point out some stuff. The Agricultural District, by the way, just so you all know, when you're looking at your zoning ordinance, you're getting into land regulations, your community, protecting the Ag District, not technically from a farmland preservation, but the activities of traditional farming are the highest level of responsibility we have as a planning commission, as a zoning ordinance, as a staff. People are farming's as American as it comes. We are protecting farmers out there in all realms. You know, you always get those calls, a subdivision gets built out on the edge of the county, and people call, he's burning back there. They're shooting guns back there. They're riding four-wheelers. There's manure. Well, we're going to show you why in the Ag District, that's where we do those kind of things, and we protect that right at the highest level. It's in the zoning ordinance for a reason, and this district needs to be protected. And then the next tier is single-family neighborhoods. It's our job to protect neighborhoods from intrusion and incompatible uses. That's the whole basis of zoning. But nothing is a higher standard than the Ag District, and I'm going to show you in the state law why that's required. So on 4-4, we got the purpose statement of the Ag District. We got now a right to farm policy, which I think is important. A lot of communities have used this, and let me just read you a couple words in that. On 4-4, 4.3.2, right to farm. The whole idea is to make sure people understand what we do in the farm community. And it's not necessarily farmland preservation, it's about what farmers do. And it says, any agricultural operation or practice that's historic, traditional, legitimate, and responsible shall be protected. Any new or expanded agricultural operation or practice that is legitimate and reasonable shall be encouraged. And then that next paragraph, I know folks in subdivisions don't like this, or maybe even neighbors in the county that live in the residential, but it says agriculture is a way of life, benefits all residents of Boyle County, is an important part of the economy and adds intrinsic value to the life of Boyle County. Agriculture as a business brings with it noise, odors, dust, mud, smoke, other inconveniences such as weed burning, equipment, livestock on public roads, odors from manure and feeds, odors from chemical applications, lights, noises at all hours of the day and night, on-farm processing and marketing of crops and livestock. To maintain this way of life, Boyle County intends to protect the agriculture operators from unnecessary intrusive litigation. Therefore, no inconvenience shall be considered a nuisance as long as it occurs as part of a non-negligent and legal agricultural practice. So without a doubt, there it is. For everyone to understand that the folks that live out in the county and farm, that's what they do. And the way they do it is how they do it, as long as it's legitimate, historic, or reasonable. This comes up every day. Dogs, kennels, mud on the road. It's part of living out in the county. People shooting guns, riding four-wheelers. We had a question about riding four-wheelers on roads the other day. Tractors, mailboxes too close. This is why we put that policy in there. A lot of communities have used this because, again, it sets the tone of what the ag district really is. It's really a farming area. And it leads on to the next major issue you guys need to consider. If you turn to page 4-5, our ag district. There's a nice big chart now what our ag district is. 217,800 square feet is 5 acres. So our ag district is being proposed to be a 5-acre district. And there's the setbacks that go with it. We won't get into all those things. And then there's the sign verbiage at the bottom of 4-5, which again, the signs are now by each district and they're generic.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, as a style question, are we gonna add acreage in there? Or is square feet just the
No, I'm gonna
industry
use square
standard?
feet and I'm gonna point that out. We might put an acreage underneath there, but when we get to the residential districts, everything's in square feet because if it's 5 or 1, we might put in parentheses 5 acre, 1 acre, but then we got 10,000, 8,000, 5,000, 6,000. So in general, to be consistent, we're putting square footages, and we may do that just for the ag district so they understand, but we really haven't made that commitment, and I want to point out a change we're gonna maybe have to think about. And then when you turn the page, and we won't get into that, but I'm gonna actually put up a slide from the old ordinance. This gets back to that side by side, and it's gonna be hard for you all to read. To start with, this is the way our Article 5 starts versus that look. There's the way it is today. And the problem with the style of the old ordinance is there's the ag district, and it starts off with all these uses. And then the things that need conditional uses. Now all the uses are going in Chapter 5. The problem with that kind of format is some uses, you have to go to every zoning district to figure out, for example, like where a kennel can go. Kennel can go in multiple places, so we've created a hierarchy in 5 where you put the uses on one side and you just flow them across all 27 districts so you can figure out where you can do what. Another problem with the ag district, we allow a lot of stuff in the ag district by right. In the first part of that chart, kennels, veterinary clinics, hospitals, schools, churches, sporting facilities, livestock sale facilities, funeral homes, junkyards, again, convalescent homes, commercial sawmills, travel trailers. It's temporary. There's some stuff, in my personal opinion, does not belong in the ag district to protect the ag district. But we push a lot of stuff out there that I think historically put that stuff out there we don't want in the city or on the edge of the town. But it truly is not agriculture in nature. Yet it's in our ag district currently. We're addressing that issue to start with. The next big problem is right here on this page. And if you guys, I asked you to do my job for a week. That one chart causes more problems and confusion in our community than, and it's not in your packet because that's the old language that was back in your strike-through. What we have in Boyle County and have since 2004 is 2 sets of standards in the ag district. So what you're seeing up there, and I'll try to point it out. So what you see is if you're using the property for agriculture, it says it's a 5-acre district and it's got rules for setbacks and lot widths and buildings. But if you're building a house, it's a 1-acre district, and it has different rules. So people come in every day and go, oh, I want to cut off 2 acres. You can do that in the ag district. We're not truly a 5-acre district. What's my rules? What's my buildings? How much garage can I have? Where's my driveway go? Well, it's different. So this whole Chapter 5 is split between the fact that if it was me, I would say, look, if we want it to be a 1-acre district, just say the minimum's 1 and put the rules down. If you want it to be a 5, then make it a 5 and put the rules down. But what we've done is put dual standards. So you got 25-foot side yard, but here you got a 20 combined, no less than 8. So again, what if I own 3.5 acres? Here's what we tell them. Well, if you're farming your 3.5 acres, you got a 25-foot setback. But if you're living on your 3.5 acres, you got 8-foot setback. Are we urban? Are we rural? Are we 1 acre? Are we 5 acre? This chapter is really tough to navigate as people come in and ask you the rules to build a garage or build a pool, or I'm farming or I'm not farming. So here's a simple solution. What is an ag district? Well, it gets no simpler than this right here. Right out of our state law, KRS 100-111, planning and zoning. Here's our definition of agriculture. See that term? 5 contiguous acres. Here's what every planning commission of the state does. They just strike that right there. And they say a tract for the production of, and that's our definition of all that stuff we do. And by the way, I love this, you farming folks. If you get down here, livestock means cattle, sheep, swine, goats, horses, alpacas, llamas, buffaloes, and any other animals with a bovine, ovine. I don't know what all those things are, but I think some of them bite and kick, but I'm not sure on that. But that's in our state law, and that's what it says agriculture is. Now, what's interesting is, are we interested as a planning commission to set our ag district as a 5-acre district? We could. A lot of communities have done that, but the political realities on the other spectrum are people want to build houses out in the county on 1 acre. And the 1 acre rule is somewhat connected to septic tanks. So the question here is, in this proposal that we're suggesting right there, do you want that to be 5 acres or do you think that should be 1? In the staff's opinion, we need to commit to a number. It'd be nice to have 1 number than 2. The other option is you could create a 1 acre district. By the way, that's exactly what we've done, is we've created an RR district, which is a 1 acre district. So on page, we'll just jump to that right now, page 4-9, we've created a 1 acre district called rural residential. So the challenge there is to get to that district, a property owner would have to zone their property before they could cut off the 1. So that's a decision you guys will have to think about. Do we want to allow the 1 acres to continue to be cut as ag lots? Or are you okay with us creating a rural residential category on this 4-9 that makes them a specific zoning district, but the owners, again, if I owned a 6-acre tract and I wanted to cut a 1, I'd have to zone it before I could plat it. That's a major deal in this book right here. That's a big deal that we need to wrestle around. The staff is proposing that we make it a true ag district, and the 1 acres and above get created in a new zoning district on 4-9, which would be RR. 4-9 also lays out our single-family districts. You heard Mr. Sharp talking about different options. We're now creating an R1A, R1B, and C that allow for multiple single-family options of a smaller lot size, patio homes, single-family townhomes, single-family condos. That's all new product style for our county. So the chart on 4-9 lays out our residential districts, again, right across the top. This is this is mobile home park. You kind of ignore that. It's very unlikely we'll get new mobile home parks, but it's there in case we ever did. But this is a question you guys really need to think about, and the staff is proposing that the ag district, again, become a 5-acre district in that chart, and it would tie in then with the state law. We're not trying to stop development in the county. If anything, we're trying to protect the farm integrity of the county and be compatible and consistent. But at the flip side, suggest that someone needs to buy 5 acres to roll a manufactured home in also has a fairness factor. That's all people can afford is to buy an acre. The solution is to create the 1 acre rural residential and make the bar real low for its own change. Waive the fees for maybe 2 years and say, look, you had to cut off the 1, proper procedures to get it zoned, so the bigger farmers could come in and comment if they wanted, but you have to go through the zoning to rural residential. The second part of that is we can take everything under 5 acres and convert it to RR from the get-go. Yes, sir.
Well, and the other side of that is, if a farmer, landowner wants to carve off a piece of land for his kids or whatever, is it more efficient to carve off an acre or carve off for 2 acres for 2 kids, or carve off 10 acres for 2 kids, or 15 acres for 3
Exactly
kids?
right. The issue is what's the integrity of the ag district? What should the development pattern be? And is it that scope, or is it the bigger picture of the farm we have in the county that are 5, 10, 15, 20, 300 acres, whatnot? The other technical issue is cutting off ones the way we do. It's interesting, we cut off more lots in the county, I think, to build homes, than we're planting new subdivision lots in the city. That's usually the reverse in most towns, and it's not here. Development patterns build out in the county, and we're building on narrow county roads with no shoulders that can't accommodate 50 new houses, and at some point we cut, and at what point are we past the tipping point on that aspect, where the 5-acre development pattern is a more sustainable pattern in the future for your county road
this is what planning commission struggled with to get to this. Planning commission I worked at, we took the easy route, we left the 1 acre district. Because politically, that is a hard one to pass right here. Politically, from the magistrate side, we're basically saying it becomes a 5 acre district and all those 1 acre cuts go away at that point.
It's a difficult balance between protecting the farmland and also taking away the rights of the farmer to do, to.
But zoning's there. The other aspect is, we're only making them do what everyone else in town would have to do if they wanted to change the development pattern. You wanna go from agriculture to highway commercial, we're just asking you to zone change. And how tough would it be to come there and ask you all to go from agriculture to rural residential, to cut off 2 1 acre lots for my kid, and if no one shows up to oppose it, it's an extra step. And we could waive the fees as a carrot. But if the room was full, say, hey, he's planning to cut off 8 1 acres down through there, and the road's 12 foot wide, gives you guys an opportunity to evaluate some of those things, other than a routine plat that's a minimum requirement. This is possibly the hardest decision you have in this whole book. I think we took the middle ground, but I can tell you most planning commissions, counties around us have 5 acre minimums, 10 acre minimums, 30 acre minimums. The state law says 5 acres is an ag tract, and under our, a lot of counties have 10 acres, 20 acres, 30 acres. And then some have 1, because that's what it worked for a septic tank. And I worked for such a county because politically it just wasn't, we weren't gonna get that passed because of that issue. The farmers are the ones that actually do the developing, and they want to be able to cut off those ones when they want to for either income or family, or they just don't want to farm anymore.
As you were referring to earlier, I mean, it almost becomes a taking if you're limiting their ability to.
I agree. What I want to get away from is that dual chart. At the end of the day, we got to fix that. So maybe one solution is to keep the 1 and the 5, but keep them ag. But at least make them 2 kinds of ag 1, ag 2. Maybe that's an option, as opposed to making them zone. But what's very confusing are people who walk in our office and say, what am I supposed to do? What's my setback? How big can I build a garage? It is very confusing to navigate this chapter with a dual set of standards in one chapter. So that is an option. We create an ag 1 and 2. We could just simply relabel that RR district to ag 2. Go AR 1, AR 2. I don't think it matters.
I don't think it's unreasonable if you, to get a zone change, if you don't make it cumbersome.
Yeah, if we lock them down with a comp plan, so, but if they're coming and cutting off 1, like we did a 2 acre today, that would have required them to come here and zone rural residential first before we could carve the 2 acres off. Yeah, we'd have to send letters, put a sign out, and if the neighbors come out and just, but that's not gonna happen.
Yeah.
So that's your first big decision item in the book, I think, is that ag district. I think it's bigger than the signs and everything else, but it really sets a development pattern for the future, forever, until we change it again. So then again, on 4-9, you see the new R1 categories. I won't get into that. But I'll jump to this next chart. This is also very confusing right now. Our old GRA and B, which we're now calling R1A and RN2, try to navigate this chapter with different lot sizes, different setbacks, and then this page is just unreal. That's the old page. So our setbacks in GRA are 25, 10, 30. And in GRB, they're 10, 8, and 30. So tell me how a duplex or a single-family structure works with a 10-foot front setback. I'm not sure anything works with a 10-foot front setback. I think what that reflects is the old development pattern we had, and those are 10 foot. Those just need to be grandfathered in to move on. I think the proposal is we're gonna move to 25-foot front setbacks. They work, but that's basically a car in front of the garage. It's not on the sidewalk. That's why 25 works. We're going away from all these 30-foot rear setbacks is the proposal, because in this chart on 4-9, 10-foot works fine in a residential setting on an urban lot. There's no reason to provide 30-foot rear setbacks on a lot in a subdivision. People want to maximize their backyard space. They want a garage, a gazebo, a deck, a pool. I don't understand the thought process behind 30-foot rear setbacks. If anything, that's a development pattern that was 30 years ago that we just carried forward up to this point. 10-foot rear setbacks work fine. And I'll tell you how strange it is. If I build an addition on my house, I have to set it back 30 foot, but if I do it detached, I can put it back 5 foot. So I can just build a detached 2-car garage, I can put it 5 foot from the property line, but if it's hooked on the house, I gotta be 30 foot. The whole idea is let people use their backyards more efficiently and do the things they wanna do on their property, and 10 foot works fine, is what we're proposing. So some of this old language is what I mentioned earlier, is very inconsistent and is very troublesome when people come in and try to navigate our old ordinance. I'm gonna roll through this a little faster. Accessory structures start on page 4-12. And we're in our residential zones now, by the way. We're in our single-family zone, mostly on sewer. Accessory structures, number 4, under E. So I want y'all zero on that. Accessory structures, number 4E. Total area of accessory building should not exceed 75% of floor area of the principal building. So we're on 4-12 of the new stuff. Item E4. Right now, that number's 40%. So let me take it, this is the other one. We take an earful daily on this. Right now, if you're GRA, and you want to build a building in your backyard, the rule is 40% of the principal structure, or 576 square feet. That's 2-car garage. Whatever's greater. If you're GRB, and you're single family, you live right next to a guy that's GRA, family, your rule is 40%, or 576, whatever's less. So that guy gets a 2-car garage, but his neighbor gets a 3-car garage. We think it ought to just be a flat percentage for accessory buildings. You buy a building at Lowe's, and you build a garage, and then you want a smokehouse or a gazebo by your pool. We say 75% of the principal footprint of your house is what you get in buildings out back. It's that simple. And then it's in scale with the lot. They still have to meet their setbacks. If they got a big house, they get more building. They got a small house, they get a little
You
less.
saying the footprint of the house or the square footage of the
It's the
house?
footprint. It's the floor area of the principal building. That's how we measure it now. So if you have a 3,000 square foot footprint, floor area, we give you 40%.
But you can have a 3,000 square foot house and you're only gonna have a 1,500 square foot footprint.
That's true. It's 2-story. It's of the floor area. It's not of the total square. It's just the floor. Because that's a perfect example. That's why we got buildings on here, by the way. That's exactly why it should be that way, because it needs to be in scale of the other buildings. And if you counted every elevation and say, hey, I got 5,400 square foot basement, attic, and then you give them that much building, it looks like they got multiple homes in the backyard. You're trying to keep that in scale. The principal's still the principal, and everything functions in an accessory fashion. But it's very confusing right now, because we tell people 40% or 576 on GRB, whatever's less. That's a 2-car garage. And I'm telling you, people come in every day and say, I want to build a 30 by 40. I got an RV, I got a boat. I'd like to put a building in my backyard. And we tell them, 2 cars is all you get. How's that going to fit my RV? You get it, you don't get it, the guy next door does get it. That's what our rules are today. Yes, sir.
Well, so floor area is the right terminology to be used?
Floor area is the industry way it works across there. It's
That
floor
means,
area.
that means footprint.
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 Footprint. So if you had a 4,500 square foot house with an 1,800 square foot footprint, we'll give you 75% for more footprint. It's a relationship footprint to footprint. What people typically, they won't use that much, but the problem is they're starting to mix. Back in the day, they bought a storage building in Lowe's, 10 by 12. Now they're building a garage, or they want a utility building, or they want a gazebo. They're mixing things. It's just what they're doing. Folks want to use their backyards differently than they did years ago.
That's a 1,350 square foot addition on a 1,800 square foot footprint. That's 75%.
75%.
That sounds reasonable.
And it's still accessory in nature, it still has, it can't be in the front yard. If
40%
it's,
is 600.
if it's attached, you can build as big as you want to build up to the setbacks. But the 40% is very limiting, and whatever's greater and whatever's less, it's just not where I think we want to be. If you think that should be 60%, I think that's working.
Now, that's including like patios, porches.
We don't do patios or poured concrete. We do anything above the ground, 6 inches or more. So it's decks, it's.
What about if the patio is walled in or?
That would count, anything that's things under roof counts. So people want to do things out back, pergolas and other things, all those things count. So these caps are very limiting. If they've already built a two-car garage and come in and want to do a pergola, you can't do it. So I think this is one of those modern changes to the book.
Steve, as a housekeeping matter, we have a content-based sign restriction up there in that section 3, which
Yeah.
talks about the types of content, so there'll need to be a strike-through on that.
Let me, Henry, we'll talk about that, because I
Sure.
put that same verbiage in every one, and I'll tell you why I did that on this one. First off, I say temporary signs containing content of a personal expression, campaign, or property sale, which are those others. Basically say they don't require permits or exempt anyhow.
Right. That means that,
Use the terminology so people understand what those signs can be, without saying how big or where. We don't have any rules for them.
but it creates a permit requirement then for things not fitting in those categories, and that, I think, is where we,
Now, we put that in every district, and we call them temporary on-premise signs containing, we can just call them temporary on-premise signs, but what we want to be careful about is, I was trying to define what generally those signs, what we don't want is someone thinking they put commercial signs in the residential zone.
commercial signs don't get strict scrutiny. They're subject to a lower standard. So you can rule that out, but then just don't talk about the other content that
And
can
then
be
when
on.
we get to commercial, we're saying they're exempt, they don't require permits, but, so you're saying strike the personal expression, or
From-
should we just say signs containing content with personal expression?
On-premise signs, and then strike everything until shall not, would be my suggestion.
Okay, that works for me. Makes it simpler. Temporary on-premise signs shall not. I'm fine with that. And that's in every district. I put that same verbiage. Now, we do say those are limited to 4 square foot per
Right,
sign.
right. That's
So
legit.
we are limiting size on whatever those are, whether they put in there, I love the Wildcats, or
Right.
American Gradient, or whatever they put in there like that. Or you do, Henry, I appreciate it.
Indeed, indeed. Is your mic still on, Steve? Is your,
I think so. Or might be. Sure. Didn't need to be for that anyhow.
People reading that, on page 412, that 4E, where you have the floor area, what do you think of putting parentheses footprint after that, so people don't get confused thinking they can use 2 or 3 floors? I mean,
Yeah, well, what's confusing is, we actually do count decks, we count what's out there, so we count gutter eaves, I mean, we work with them a bunch to get the number they want. So the true floor area is what we say it is, but what we actually do is, everything is sort of on the ground that meets our definition.
If
of
you're
the
gonna say
principal
floor area,
structure.
you need to say footprint.
Yeah, I was
Because
just saying.
floor area
put-
can be considered
footprint
up and down.
parentheses.
Yeah, like footprint better.
Yeah,
Can it
you
not?
have the decks and all the same things. You
Yeah.
just-
Footprint is pretty clear that
So
it's,
say 75%
Yeah.
of the footprint, and then you want in parentheses,
No, I was leaving floor area and just putting footprint in
in
parentheses,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. We will do that. Dog ear that page, that's what it, okay. So let's keep rolling on to the next page. I want to show you something new on 413 under 8. We're opening up accessory apartments in just one single-family district. And that's for like, the request is all the time about mother-in-law suites. We're doing things, where you had a garage or something of that nature, and you wanted to build a mother-in-law suite. Technically, we don't allow those in our single-family zones. So accessory apartments are a new kind of concept for aging parents or kid that comes back into the household. You want to build another kind of unit on the property. Technically, today, you can't have 2 units on a single-family property. The accessory apartments, though, are accessory in nature. They're limited in scale. This says the floor area of the accessory apartment may not exceed 50%, again, of the floor area of the principal structure. So we're saying you can do them, and we only allow them in the R1A category, because that's the bigger lots anyhow. We don't want them in the smaller lots. But we also say if you're gonna attach them where the entrances have to be, and you gotta provide an extra parking space. But the idea is, this is a need that's out there. Several people call us and say, hey, I wanna build a little suite, my mom's older, she's gonna live with us. And some people honestly want your kid to come back, or they might wanna even lease it for caregiver and work it out like that, or a daycare option. And we don't allow that today. And a lot of towns do. And it's not unpractical. You got a big residential lot, you got a nice garage out back, and you want to finish out the upstairs and call it an accessory apartment. But But you gotta be very clear about that, because right now we say only one principal dwelling per lot. This isn't a principal dwelling, this is an accessory dwelling.
You got floor area. and this
Yeah, and
one
I'd have to
too.
fix that too. Yep.
Steve, one more point on this. When this type of use has come up in discussion in other communities, there have been people who have feared that folks are going to start sticking a trailer in their backyard and renting that out. I see this language in here that talks about not altering the character of the neighborhood, and I guess that kind of addresses that. Is that how you?
But
Okay.
out in the county, we allow accessory apartments.
Sure.
In theory, in that percentage, they wanted to roll a mobile home behind a double wide.
Right.
And it meets the percentage, and it becomes accessory in nature. Mom lives out there, and boys live.
Right. Sure.
The goal is to allow that relationship to happen on a single piece of property. Where historically, we say one unit per property, one family per property. And if you want your caregiver to live in an accessory apartment, those are modern things.
Would that be grandfathered then after that purpose was
Yes.
fulfilled? It's
And we have some of these around town right now. I think there's a lot of accessory units. What we tell people is, hey, you can build a bathroom, but you can't, once it has kitchen, bathroom, sleeping, and it's separate, it actually becomes a separate dwelling unit. It's actually a violation of the GRA. But if it just had the bathroom, not the kitchen, or the kitchen, not the bathroom, technically it doesn't meet our definition of a dwelling unit. And the son can sleep back there in the garage, you can finish it out, but if it becomes a standalone unit where he can eat, sleep, and cook, and use the restroom, then it technically you've created two dwellings on the property. Okay in RM2, not okay in single family. This is sort of makes this happen in a different fashion. And at the bottom of 4-13, solar panels. This is a growing issue. Our ordinance is very dated. We talk about birdhouses and satellite dishes, these things you put in the backyard. What's happened in people's backyards has changed a lot in the last 10 years. Solar panels are happening. How do you address those? How do you screen those? When are they appropriate? I wrote this provision. It's all brand new. I don't think it exists anywhere in Kentucky. Talked with some solar companies that are installing these and said, look, when these go in backyards, sometimes they're intrusive to neighbors. And they agree. And so this is a set of standards that flows through the book, starts with single family, turn the page, and talks about how we use solar panels on a residential lot, let's say in Lenox or in any subdivision. How would a solar panel be allowed? Now, a lot of that is regulated under restrictive covenants of the developer. You know, Mr. Sharp may build a subdivision and say what you can do in your backyard, fences and whatever. But solar panels are happening, and we get calls about, hey, he's put this thing up, it's reflecting on my house, it's making me running my birds off my birdhouse next door, whatever. These are some reasonable standards that address what infrastructure you're putting in the backyard that we didn't do 10 years ago. We're basically saying if we put them on the house, can't go above the roof line. We don't want them facing streets or being in the front yard setbacks. And then we're gonna screen things when they're intrusive to neighbors. And then those other things like standalone generators, conduit, wires, other infrastructure, they're addressed in that supporting structure in G. So this sets a standard in neighborhoods for how solar panels, we've actually got one in Lenox, and they have worn me out about that solar. The guy's he's off the grid in Lenox. He's put a panel in the backyard, and it's big, and they all face south, and they reflect the other direction, and the neighbors wear us out about the solar panel. I said, hey, it's an accessory structure, it's 5 foot off the property line, that's what he wants to do, it's a power source. And we need to address it because it's becoming more frequent on buildings, on building rooftops, on commercial buildings. So for the first time, we got a solar panel standard. And then it flows downhill through all the districts in a more limited, less limited fashion as we get to commercial and whatnot. And so with that, on 414 and 415, this is what you heard Mr. Sharp mention. 0 lot line homes on 414, and at the bottom of 415, townhomes and patio homes at the bottom of 415. This is what we would call a single-family attached product. So tomorrow, if our Commissioner Barry decides he's going to build some patio homes, the way we address those, if they're attached, we would naturally assume it's multifamily. That's the only place you could build it, multifamily. Although he might be willing to deed restrict those and say they're single-family only. To do attached single-family, the only way we can do that currently is to a condominium association, like Subdivision. But that product is out there, patio homes, whether it be attached detached. And what we're saying is we're fine with those in single family, but they have to be exclusively committed to a single family. And then the concept of townhomes and patio homes, turn the page, there's the standards. They would be single family attached. Now, the districts we permitted them in are the new R1, B, and C. And that wasn't a mistake. We're not putting them into R1A simply because people might not be ready for this in existing neighborhoods. We would not have any B and C category anywhere in our community. So the product's there is a single-family product, but the developer's gonna have to come in here and zone it first. So if someone wants to create an R1B zone or C to do patio homes, you guys get to look at it from the zone change forward, deal with the compatibility issues with the neighborhood. But this is a product type that's becoming very prevalent around the country, these patio homes. And here we'd have to clearly plat them as condos to make them work. So we can do attached units as single family. That's what's growing all around the country. And we get asked about that a lot, about patio homes. No developers are doing those other than under the condo regime or multifamily. So that's all new stuff on
Like
The
the
this page.
solar panels, they're not supposed to put them on the roof at the, toward the street, something like that in there?
Yeah, it's in there.
What if I only want to put it, the only place I got to put it on the house is south,
Put it in the backyard, faces south, up in there.
I got to put it in the backyard because of your roof.
Accessory.
I can't put it on my roof
It
where I want
will
it.
reflect on neighbors. And the solar company said they don't recommend, if you call the one and say, I want to put it on my front of my house, they'd say, you don't want to do that. Structurally, it's not even
I
sometimes the
just want
best.
a fairly small one to run my hot water heater. I want to put it on my roof, but it's, and
Some are
it's
small.
south is the street.
Right.
You won't let me do that.
Not on the, no, none on the
I
front
don't
yard.
like that roof.
But you can put it in the back and it works. It's tricky to take an existing house and mount these panels on the roof right now. And some of them are pretty big and some of them are small. Some of you buy at Walmart, put something small, no one's gonna call about those. What we're putting on these houses and what people are doing are literally trying to power the entire system off. 2 or 3 big, some of them are 32 square, I mean, sheets of plywood big, maybe 3 or 4 of those, mounted on the whole side of the back of the house. They're big, and they're heavy, and there's a building permit issue that needs to be addressed too. But they do reflect on your neighbors. If you put them in the front yard, they're flashing in your neighbor's house across the street. They're very reflective. So the solar panel comes in, if you call them, say, I want to put a whole system, they're going to recommend either mount in the backyard, or if you're south side, you want to mount a building side, and you're facing south, they're going to recommend they go in the backyard. If you
What about your neighbor in the backyard?
Well, we say if it's
He
intrusive,
just
you
said
gotta
solar.
screen it. You gotta screen it. Yeah. Well, again, it's tricky. This is happening, fast. 4-19, and I'm gonna wrap up here and just jump to the side here real quick. This is our multifamily zones. R2 starts at the top. I just wanna point out R2, R3, R4 are all sewer districts, as they currently are. And RM2 is the old GRB, allows twin homes, duplexes, and single-family, utilizing single-family standards. R3, again, 3 to 8 units, and R4 we've never had, but it would be more dense apartments over 8 units. And they all kind of flow together. You can still do single-family, and you can do the denser type as you go up to the denser multifamily. And if you flip the page, you see the lot sizes, minimum lot sizes, setbacks for all the RM2, RM3, and RM4 districts. The RM2, 10,000 is exactly what we would require for a duplex and GRB today. And then the setbacks are all going to that 2510 concept. One big change, follow that chart, off-street parking is going to bedroom-based. Now, this is where tad in my experience comes in. Historically, we require 2 parking spaces for any residential unit. So if you build a house, 2 parking spaces. Build a duplex, 2 parking spaces for each. You build an 8-plex, 2 parking spaces. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, and I'll show you in restaurants, the standard doesn't work. Bedroom-based parking fixes a problem, because right now, I'll give you an example, there's a gentleman building 2 3-bedroom duplexes in this community. 3-bedroom duplexes. And we're making him put 4 parking spaces in. So as soon as he rents to 3 guys on each side, or they have guests over, we're gonna have 6 to 8 cars trying to park on that site, and our standards for parking spaces. So what we're saying is with single family, it's always 2. But when we get to multifamily, we go to bedroom base, it should be a function of the bedrooms. And that half space that you see in RM3, for example, 1.5 can be 1 bedroom, 2.5, that builds guest parking into the equation. So if you decide to build 30 apartments, and they're 2 bedroom or 3 bedroom or combination, that's how we calculate the parking, when that half space builds guest parking in and accommodates for those other bedrooms. Because again, what's happening out there, 3 college guys moving a 3-bedroom duplex, well, like there's 3 cars, if not 5 on that property, we're requiring 2 parking spaces. And they're hanging out on the sidewalk, parked on the curb or in the road. The bedroom-based parking works. I learned that the hard way after years of doing just flat 2 parking spaces. It does not work. This is fair and works in scale with the development. And again, it tends to deal with all those kinds of intrusive parking issues that you get with multifamily. And by the way, when we did the 707 Old Shakertown, and we made them commit to guest parking and they put it in there, you guys did exactly that without this standard being in place. You built in guest parking for that development. And that's what the developer, you put it wherever he wants, he's got to do 1/2 space for every bedroom to go to guest parking. So that's a brand new concept for our community, and I think it's something that we improve if we start to build more apartments and duplexes in our town. So with that, I'm going to jump to page, again, if you guys at some point say we're done, we'll be done here.
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
This is back on 4.2. GRB, you said is now RM2?
Correct.
It's not R1B?
No, because GRB today allows single-family or duplexes.
Oh, it does? Okay.
So to be fair, we can't convert that to the smaller single-family because there are people who currently have duplexes out there. But this is a problem because most of our town is zoned GRB and is clearly single-family homes. But today, Lexington Ave is a good example. You can tear your house down, build a duplex, and then you can stop. That's an old problem we have, but moving forward, we want duplexes to be in their own district to protect single family.
10 minutes, we adjourn.
All right. So we get to 427, we're in commercial. I won't get into much of that. I guess we'll just jump to signs on page
439.
39. Let's jump into that. Section 4, yeah, absolutely. Got it planned in there. Yeah, so in the ag district, the solar panel language is permissive of with exclusive use to get solar farms. But we don't see that happening in the single family zone, obviously. Commercial zones, industrial zones, and agricultural zones allow solar panels to be the principal use of the property and are, in, for example, ag, we have one of this area. That is in the ag district.
There's some very real considerations for that in Boyle County.
Mark talking to
In some very nice pieces of property. You can imagine how that would change the landscape.
Well, actually, Kendall, there's a, in chapter 5, we have what's called merchant generating facility, which could be wind or solar. And those facilities are then in chapter 5 shown where they can be across the district, and if they're standards or not standards. But in the ag district, clearly, we're not going to impede anyone that wants, for example, to do 500 acres of solar panels in a power generating substation fashion. We would be accommodating that in the ag district, and chapter 5 clearly lays that out, district by district, where you can do those more intensive, they're called merchant generating facilities under the state law, and they could be wind or solar. So, and that's in chapter 5.
And I don't have an opinion of how I feel about that, but it's just something.
It's a good point, because again, in the ag district, there's some proposals right now. The question is, do you allow them to do them corner to corner to corner? Let's say they do 300-400 acres of them. Do we need some setbacks just to protect, if you live next door on 10 acres, let's say? And I think we're trying to address that in chapter 5. And there are some serious facilities being designed and considered in our county of that size. by Chicago, you've seen those wind farms,
Yeah.
they're massive. And we've got that set up to accommodate those kind of facilities, and our state law directs us on how we, have to allow those and not discriminate on some of those issues too.
Something else, Kendall?
Well, I was just gonna say that I really, I think that there'll be some farm, basically farm, where our position will come from, that won't be happy about losing the ability to create an acre tract. And I don't like the idea of having to go through the exercise of coming here to do a zone change just yet. I mean, there has to be rules and stipulations for why it wouldn't be okay to zone change something rural residential. I mean, there's gotta be situations where it's not okay, and so I think you kind of, if we're gonna have rural residential, not lay some groundwork for what is acceptable rural residential. In other words, does it have to be on an arterial road, or does it have to be, have sewer service, or things like that? And I'm all for getting rid of all these 1 acre lots in the county just because they don't have sewer service. And it's just an environmental problem that we can be dealing with, but, and, you know, as far as smart growth and little things, you know, all the homes should be centralized around our infrastructure, especially our sanitary sewers. So, I've always said, or always thought, that just 1 acre minimum is a problem. People tend to spend like to live, I think.
I agree. And the rural residential setup right now is a sewer or septic district, and it's 1 acre, so in theory, it's there to cut the ones individually, but it's also, if you wanted to come in and propose a 30-lot subdivision on septic, which could happen, you'd have to go through the zone change, come before this board and say, look, this isn't just cutting off some ones, this is actually cutting off, this is a 30-lot plan subdivision with roads, streets, in a rural setting, here's my plan, and yeah, we're gonna utilize septic systems. It still leaves that option open, but the likelihood is that we're cutting ones individually as opposed to someone coming in and proposing 8 or 10 or 20. Kendall's right, I mean, to take this away would be tricky. Again, one of the options is to make an ag 1, ag 2, and just move on. But at the same point, if we're planning and thinking long-term, the 1 acres are somewhat problematic from an environmental side, from a road side. And we need to make a decision. The rural district, and he's right, to come in and make a zone to cut off 1 lot. Mayor's Way, if you're just cutting 1 or 2, you're exempt. But if you're trying to do 10 of them or 8 of them, or a whole subdivision, you need a zone.
Well, you can do 2 to 5 times, get around
We
that.
can do that. It'd be hard for us to track.
Yeah, the Harris Mercer County has a
Exception.
exception for family occupancy, 1 acre lots.
I gotta check, I gotta do blood tests.
It gets complicated.
It's complicated. Well,
Yeah.
I'll talk to you some more about that. That's something you guys may mull over the next 30 days and we can come back on that one, because that's a serious issue. We could trend some of those if you want us to.
Hey,
Yes, sir.
the wind, what about the wind farm rules? Because, I mean, I travel a lot, in different countries even, I see some pretty horrible things. And the wind farm part, we also have lots of hills here, and of course, it has to be done with the just where we were talking about putting that cell tower in. There's some issues with the airport in terms of the height of those things. If they occur on those hills, they could be very dangerous. I mean, I'm just saying that, because like if you go out the knobs there, that's the area where they would probably put something like that. And they're really tall, they really make a lot of noise.
So here's the thing. We're addressing every one of those issues about 4 different ways.
Yeah.
One way is at the very end of chapter 4, there's at the very last page of 4, there's something called the KAZC, the Kentucky Airport Zoning Commission. We're creating that as an overlay district. It's a state law that anything that's within their window of authority, meaning those approaches, that concave bowl that they put around airports, you're not allowed to build anything that's taller than 80 foot without their approval first. So we're recognizing that that's there, it's never been in our book, and all permits are supposed to go through that approval, and that would catch those. Number 2, that merchant electric generating facility, again, is tricky because if they're selling wholesale into the grid, the Public Service Commission governs that, and we can't really regulate a lot of stuff. If someone's coming to do a wind farm or solar farm that's being sold into the KU grid, it's very tricky, and the state law has been laid out on how to address that. But we have put some setback requirements from residential, some other things to address the bigger facilities. That would be in chapter 5. So we're definitely gonna catch the airport-related issues at the end of chapter 4. So with that, I don't know if we wanna, before we get to signs, I guess I better point out one change here. Kendall, we've been talking about that a little bit. On parking, that's on page 4-34. We're in the commercial zone, and I told y'all there's a lot to chapter 4. It's a bunch of stuff. By the way, the ordinance is getting way smaller. Currently in our ordinance, our parking space requirement is 9 by 19. I don't know where that 19 came from, but the industry out there is typically 9 by 18 is a typical parking space. We require 9 by 19. And then if we parallel park on a business lot, our standard is 12 by 22. That's wider than most driving lanes on a highway. The typical parking space in a parallel parking standard is 8 by 22. But our parking requirements right now say if you're gonna be parallel parking in your parking lot, Walmart, we want the space to be 12 by 22. I guess maybe back in the day we thought they needed as wide as a door can open, but that's not how we do on-street parking. That's not a realistic number to make someone consume their parking lot with. So we're changing those standards to meet current parking numbers. So there's our parking chart. And then this page right here, it says at the bottom, it says that, again, parallel parking, 22 by 12. Parallel is 9 by 19. We're changing that to 9 by 18 and 8 by 22. This next page is a big deal in our old book, and you don't have this, but the page that you do have, I'm referring to in your book, is 436. We do talk about parking spaces and angled parking and aisle widths. Currently, in our book, we have, and this is interesting, we have 2 of the 6 real-world scenarios that happen. 0% parking, 30%, 45, 0 degree, 30 degree, 45, 60, and 90, one-way or two-way, in our aisle widths. But what happens is sometimes they have parking on both sides of the aisle, and sometimes you have one aisle. So our chart, our new chart on 4-36, identifies all 6 real-world situations, which is one-way aisle width, two-way aisle width, one-way aisle width, 1 row, one-way aisle width, 2 row, on and on. And then it lays it out for 90, 60, 45, 30, and 0 degree parking. And what those numbers are, and one nice chart is you can hand that to Kendall or a developer. If they're gonna come here and build a restaurant, I don't know how they're gonna park it, but they can design it and they can see that's our minimum width, parking space, aisle, parking space, depending if you go 90, 45, whatever they do. Our current chart is that one right here. And I get questioned, well, what if it's what if it's 2 aisles, 2 rows? I'm like, well, we don't have that number. We just got one-way and two-way traffic with no understanding of dual parking or single parking. So that fixes that. And that's a big help to us as we try to communicate to people what the parking standards are. So with that, I think I'm gonna stop, as our chairman suggested, and not do any signs, and we'll pick it up next time. It starts on 4-39. If that's okay, we'll stop at 4-39 and pick back up with that page on signs. We still got 20-some pages to get through of this chapter and start chapter 5.
Just for the record, we need a motion to table this till the next meeting.
So moved.
Jeff moves, Vince seconds, all in favor, votes unanimous. Any other good for the order? Hearing none, a motion to adjourn. Susie makes it, Terry seconds, all in favor, we're adjourned. Thank you.